Hello, everybody, and welcome into another playoff preview show here at the Hockey Writers. I'm your host, Matthew Zator, and we've got Jacob Billington and Brian Finlayson. This series, Jacob's going to fill in for the Blues on this one. I may have seen him just on the Senators one, but he's gonna step in here. And of course, Brian covers the Jets. So, Brian, how's it going?
It's going well. Just really gearing up for that Saturday night. Things kicking off here. Already I'm seeing, the wealth of jerseys wandering around the city today is already, there's been an uptick.
Yeah, the Jets, they usually make the playoffs. They don't go very far, though, unfortunately. This year, They won the President's Trophy. I wouldn't say that's always a given for playoff success because most of the time isn't. But we will see how that all goes. The Blues, they were just on such a heater to end the season. That's why they're in the playoffs. It wasn't as monumental of a rise as when they won the cup. Coming from the bottom of the league. But they were near there. They were in the middle, and they rose up to have the final wildcard spot and face the President's Trophy winners. So we'll see how it all goes. So let's get started. And we're going to talk about the journey to the playoffs, and we'll start with the Jets. They've been dominant for most of the season. That's why they won the President's Trophy. That's why Connor Hellebuyck is he will win the Vezina Trophy. His stats are just off the charts. So what has been the Jets' journey like to this point?
It's really, it goes without saying that this season was a shock in terms of how good they were. Like everyone kind of knew they had the base, competitive structure that they had last year going into the playoffs, but to have the best regular season in franchise history, I don't think was on anyone's radar. Obviously 116 points, 56 wins. And then, as you mentioned, Connor Hellebuyck, creeping into the top three, all time in terms of single season wins. You have, obviously he's going to win the Vezina, and there's even talk of him having, Hart votes. And, everything kind of came together for the most part this season. The power play has been outstanding, which was a huge weakness last year. Among the bottom in the league last year with, their power plays percentage. And they also had a middling penalty kill. If you have both in the bottom half, it's not a recipe for success. For the bulk of the season, they were challenging that all-time power play percentage in a single season mark set by the Oilers a few years back. And it really only dipped near the end of the season when two of their key, power play performers actually had to sit out with injury. But it was one of those seasons where everything came together so perfectly, and it just worked. Everything clicked, and it was the culture stuff that Rick Bowness had set in, and then Arneal just took it a step further, and everyone bought in, and it all worked out really well.
Yeah, it helped. We talked about it on the season preview about him just kind of moving from the assistant coach to the head coach, and it was seamless. And maybe arguably better. When you're looking at what they did, it helps having Hellebuyck, but wasn't the only reason why they won. That's the offense. They're really good defensively, probably one of the top teams defensively. Again, helpful that you have the best goalie in the league. But yeah, it's going to be fun to see what they can do in the playoffs. I know we'll talk about maybe a weakness. Hellebuyck in the playoffs isn't the Hellebuyck of the regular season most of the time, but we'll talk about that later. All right, Jacob, what are the Blues? I mentioned they went on that heater. I think was that a 13-game winning streak, 12-game winning streak that kind of just got them to this point. What has been their journey been like? It's been up and down. They had a lot of new faces coming into the season, new coach this season. It wasn't even from the beginning of the season. It was halfway through, I believe, when they switched coaches to Jim Montgomery after he was fired from the Bruins. So what has been their journey like?
Yeah, it's very reminiscent of 2019 when they went from worst to first and ended up winning the Stanley Cup. Like it was a magical season. I don't expect that this season. But like you said, they ended up firing their coach. They hired Jim Montgomery when he became available. Bold move. I think the thing is they didn't see their coach as the long-term solution. They were just kind of hey, you're going to hang out here for a little bit. So they fired Drew Bannister. And then they were like, you know what? Jim Montgomery is the coach of the future. It wasn't even about the performance of Bannister. I feel like the Blues didn't have super high expectations this season, and they were just outside the wild card. But then they bring in Montgomery because when do you get the opportunity to bring in Jim Montgomery? So take advantage of that. And then the entire team changed. Then you get Dylan Holloway going on a heater. Robert Thomas has become like the best player in the league since that hiring. Colton Parayko came back at the end of the season. He had a really good start to the year. It was just a storybook season for the Blues, as was 2019. So everything went as well as it could have post Christmas break. So it's been a good season for them. Obviously, they went on that 12 game win streak, solidified themselves in a playoff spot, but then lost like 3 or 4 in a row and almost actually lost the spot after that huge run. So hopefully that didn't shake them too much. Hopefully that they can regain that confidence that they were riding on that streak and carry that into the playoffs, because they're going to need it against the Blues. Or against the Jets, sorry.
Jets, yeah. They are, and that's the thing. I think that usually happens after long winning streaks. All of a sudden, you go on a little losing streak because maybe it just you fall from that mountain. But that was the reason why they made it. And if not for the Flames' big push at the end, that was the reason they could have missed. But they're in here, and we'll see how it goes. All right, let's talk about some players to watch. And Brian, there's a lot on the Jets. Of course, we mentioned Hellebuck. Of course, we're going to watch him. He'll be front and center. At anyone that you want to really highlight as someone as players to watch here?
Yeah, I mean, the one that came to mind the most was Cole Perfetti. He's coming off his first full season in the NHL. Last year, he missed time with injury and some coaches' decisions. Year before, he missed part of the year as well. So this was his first full year, and he really rounded into the player I think everyone was expecting. He ended up putting up 50 points. He became so good off the puck. He increased his forechecking, stuff that you need for a playoff series. He's positioned himself well in the sense that he is playing the style you want to see from your middle six guys, and he can score, and he's very smart. Like he's actually got better at his passing game, which I didn't think was possible because he was already an incredible passer. But some of the stuff that he's done this year with Nikolai Ehlers and on the power play, in Ehlers' absence and Velarde's absence, he's been on the power play with, obviously he's been feeding Kyle Connor and Mark Scheifele, and it's something that they need, is that really elite passer, and he's become that. And then I'd be remiss not to kind of highlight, and players to watch is the injured duo in Gabe Vilardi and Nikolai Ehlers, where it doesn't seem likely that we'll even see Ehlers in this first series. He's week to week after colliding with the linesman and re-aggravating his foot injury from earlier in the year in that game against Chicago a couple days ago. And then Gabe Vilardi, little bit closer. He's skating on his own, but still hasn't done any contact. So we're probably looking game 2 or 3 with that one. So the second that they get into either the series or the playoffs, they're going to be difference makers because they can just add so much to a team. So it's hard not to kind of keep an eye on that. And then, as you said, Hellebuck, you have to keep an eye on him at all times because when he's on, he's on. And last year, and I'd like to highlight this too. Last year, yes, you'd like him to make more of those saves, but everything the Jets had done throughout the whole season to be the best defensive team in the league out the window as soon as Colorado started skating fast, and everything was coming from in the slot, and it was essentially a firing squad. So obviously he's got to make some more of those saves, but it was kind of a set up to fail situation. So I think if they give him a better chance to make those saves that he's made all year, he'll be the one to watch as like the difference maker.
Yeah, I mean, and that's the thing. I mean, yes, you can have the best goalie in the league, but you still got to limit the high danger chances. That you're not going to. It's not going to stop them all, even though he seems to be able to. You don't want to take that chance for sure. So definitely something to look at too. right, Jacob, about the Blues. I mean, we already mentioned a couple guys, but the two guys that came in from the Edmonton Oilers went to the Stanley Cup final last season, and Philip Broberg kind of came in later on and looked pretty good. Dylan Holloway played the whole way through, but he's a totally different player this season. So who should everyone be watching in this series for the Blues?
Well, to stick with Brian's kind of injured reserve player, I'm going to go with Dylan Holloway. He's listed as week to week right now and has been for 2.5 weeks or so. So I would expect that the earliest he comes in is game 4, maybe game 5. But even then, it could be a bit longer. He is a difference maker on this team. He makes them so much better. Obviously, I mentioned Robert Thomas. He's a player to watch for sure. But my number one guy that is healthy right now is going to be Jordan Billington, kind of the totally opposite of Connor Hellebuck. Now we have the American and Canadian team playing again, but the goalies are on the opposite sides this time. Jordan Billington, he knows how to play in the big games. He knows how to play in the playoffs. Can he do that? Like, he's shown that he's not the best goalie in the regular season, but when it matters, he plays that well. So I'm going to look to see if he can do that again.
Yeah, Bennington's going to be huge. He's got tons of experience, of course, has a cup and knows what it takes to get and go all the way. So, and of course, Dylan Holloway being not in this series to start is a big thing. He's probably their best player all season. And not having him to start, you'd hope that he'd come into this series. If it goes long, we'll have predictions later on, but he may not even enter this series. So we'll see how that all plays out too. All right. Speaking of victory and who's going to win this one, Brian, the Jets, they've got so much going for them. They're probably the biggest favorites in this series, but we all know the 1 versus 8 matchup isn't always the one wins it. So what do the Jets need to do to win this series?
I think there's a few things, and I think they're very, very key. And it's one of those things where you can't necessarily pull on a bunch of different things. There's things that came immediately to mind where one is using their depth to their advantage. They have wildly underrated depth players that obviously you hear of the main ones, guys like Niederreiter and Adam Lowry, but their fourth line in the last month or so has been outstanding. So now Brandon Tanev, Morgan Barron has moved to center, and Jared Anderson-Dolan's playing on their other wing. They are tenacious. They are annoying to play against, and they have done a really good job of, hemming opponents in. And then as that's happening, they start the on-the-fly line change to bring the top line out, and that has led to a lot of success. It's also Morgan Barron has started scoring beautiful goals, which he's had the tools, and using that depth as an offensive force is only a net positive. And so you've got things like that, and then I mentioned it as well. You have to protect the ice in front of Connor Hellebuck. You can't let the Blues sneak into the slot and just fire away. You have to clear the crease. You have to give them room to work, because there was a lot of things too. Obviously, yes, there was the slot shots and everything against Colorado, but they also they were screening their own goalie at that point, and it was a horrible combination of circumstances that led to a wealth of goals going in for the Avs last year. So I think clearing the front of the net and then also just limiting the stuff inside, bringing it outside, it'll help a lot, obviously on Hellebuck, but allowing them to turn that into an offensive play in transition. So that don't get burned by speed, because that's what killed them last year as well. So I think too, once Velarde may come back, try and find the power play again, because they've slumped a little bit, but they're missing their two best. So it's hard to blame them. But I think you look at those things in particular. If even 2 or 3 of those go right, I really like the Jets odds in this one.
Yeah, and the Blues do have some speedy forwards. Jordan Kyrou is a really, he's probably one of the better skaters in the league, and he can do things at that speed. So he could be a problem. One thing Jets don't have to worry about in this one is facing Mikko Rantanen and Nathan McKinnon. Those two guys really, really burned them, and Cale Makar, of course, too. So, the Blues don't have those guys, those types of guys, but we'll see how it goes. All right, for the Blues, Jacob, they've got, like I said, lots of speed, so they could potentially push the Jets. What are the keys to victory to get out of this and pull off the upset?
I think everybody just keeping their defensive game strong. We've seen like with the Bruins under Jim Montgomery, that's how they play. They shut you down, they wear you down, and then they take advantage of any offensive opportunity that they get. And so with Thomas, Kyrou, hopefully Holloway's back, and like Buchnevich and Shen, like they have the capability to do that. They will wear you down. They will forecheck you hard. They might not look for all the high danger chances right away, but by the time the end of the second period hits, like they're going to wear you down. They're going to have the opportunities to score. And looking at the defensive group, like you've got Cam Fowler, who's offensively talented. Justin Falk, who in the past has shown that. Philip Broberg, of course, but with Colton Parayko leading the way and some of those other guys, they're not, and Ryan Suter, of course, they're not a very fast and mobile defensive group. So they're going to need to play really strong defensively to kind of counterbalance that. They're going to need to play physical against these Jets. They're going to need to keep the Jets to the outside, which that's an easy thing to say, but some of these Jets players are quite dangerous from the outside. So you look at Kyle Connor, Mark Scheifele, and Nikolai Ehlers, those three in particular are pretty dangerous from the outside. So you just have to really make sure you work your angles, and you're going to have to just play physical. The Jets aren't the most physical team. They've got some guys, like they've got Adam Lowry, they've got Dylan DeMello, a few other guys, Luke Shen, of course, but they're not the most physical team. And they're a relatively small team up front. So hopefully the Blues can take advantage of that.
Yeah, that hasn't been a problem for the Jets, of course, throughout the season. But it's something that could in a short. I mean, the thing is, though, the playoffs is they're a short series and short amount of games. That's why these upsets happen. So we'll see what they can do with that. I mean, they're a pretty big team, and they do play that physical style. So we'll see if that becomes a factor in this series. All right. Now, Brian, the Jets don't have a lot of weaknesses. That's why they won the President's Trophy. But what is one of them that you're really kind of worried about? Is it the injuries that are happening right now? What's something that you're worried about going in?
Yeah, I think two things off the top of my head. Injuries are one. Missing two top six forwards going into a playoff series is something that everyone dreads. They've managed fairly well over the last while. Obviously, Ehlers went down late in the season, but they've been without Velarde for close to a month now. And they've managed. Alex Iafallo has been outstanding on that top line. They just re-signed him, well deserved, and he's been a Swiss Army knife for them. So it's worked right now, but as you mentioned, in a short series, a couple bad games from a line, maybe if it's without Velarde still, that could put you in a hole. So having those two top six forwards down, definitely a weakness. And then I would just say the Jets' third pairing. It's Luke Shen and Logan Stanley. And for me, the biggest thing that worries me, especially maybe it's just, haunting me from last season, but the speed, and those two do not have foot speed at all. So essentially, if they're on the ice against any of the speedy Blues forwards, you need one of them to essentially just stay put and hang back. Otherwise, they're going to get beaten along in transition there. So they're physical. They can clear the front of the crease, but their skating is going to leave some openings for the Blues to maybe come right at them and get around them.
Yeah, like we've mentioned speed as a thing already a few times here, and there is discrepancy between the two teams in that. I mean, not a huge one, because the Jets do have some speedy forwards. I mean, they can do it too off the rush, but they could, and especially without Ehlers. I mean, he's probably one of their best off the rush, so that might be something. All right, Jacob, what about the Blues? A weakness that the biggest one that you're worried about going into this series?
Yeah, I think it's going to be, can the young guys step up to the plate? So you look at their lineup. They've got Jake Neighbors, Zach Bolduc, Philip Broberg, Dylan Holloway, Alexei Torpachenko. Like, they've got some really good young guys in the lineup. And Jimmy Snuggerud, of course, who's pretty fresh on the scene. Can they step up? Like, they've been important parts. They're a huge part of the reason why the Blues are where they are right now in the like in the playoffs. Can they keep that up in the playoffs? That's going to be my biggest concern.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of youth, and what's good too is they got a lot of veteran guys that have been around. I mean, not a lot from that Stanley Cup run, obviously, but there are some good playoff experience in there. Ryan Suter being probably the biggest one. He's been around the block a few times. So, I mean, they do have that, maybe a good mix. But yeah, their key guys, their biggest players are quite young. So we'll see how they do. All right, quick fire round. And Brian, I'll start with you for this. X factors going into this series. What's an X factor for you?
I've mentioned it already, and I think it's by far the biggest one is Hellebuck and the team defense. If they can play well, that's the thing. Connor Hellebuck, people forget, has every single win in this franchise's playoff history, both Thrashers and Jets. So obviously the last 2 years have soured people on, his play, but he also led them to that run where they, are just a few wins away from the Cup final in 2017, right? So he's got a track record before he has to get back on track, because with the defense in front of him, look what they did to the Blues like 2 weeks ago to end that 12-game streak. They were the ones to do it. They held the Blues to 15 shots, and it was like a walk in the park for Hellebuck that night. So do that and just, bear down in front of him, give him the best chance he can to make the saves, and I'm, fairly certain they're well off.
Yeah, and I didn't mention the season series. It was won by the Jets 3-1. The only win that the Blues had was a 4-1 win at Canada Life Center in December. So the last two have gone the Jets' way, 4-3 in overtime and 3-1, that one you just talked about. So, I mean, the Blues have a win that they can kind of fall back on, and it is at a pretty tough place to play. So we'll see if that comes into play. Jacob, what about you for an X factor for the Blues?
I think it's going to be Parayko, what level he's playing at. He just came back from a knee injury. I think he played the last 2 games of the season, if I'm not wrong. And he's a huge part of the success that they had. He was a big part of Team Canada at the Four Nations. It's like his shutdown ability, his physicality, his shot, everything on that blue line runs through him, which isn't great. Like, he's not an Adam Fox. He's not a Quinn Hughes. He's not one of those kind of defensemen. He's not what you want as a number one, but he gets the job done. The Blues understand how to play with him as the number one, which is what's important. So if he's come back and he's fully healthy and he's going at 100%, I think that's going to be the biggest X factor in this series for the Blues.
And Parayko's got that playoff experience too. I mean, he was quite young when it was happening there, but he can be a difference maker too. We'll see how much of one he is. Okay, let's move to a series MVP, and that can be from either team. But Brian, who will be the series MVP? It could be. It might be Hellebuck. Who do you got?
I mean, that's the easy answer, and I could absolutely get away with saying that because it makes a lot of sense. But I'm going to go to, kind of pivoting off of what we were just talking about, but instead, Colton Parayko's partner from the Four Nations, Josh Morrissey.
Yeah,
Josh Morrissey, over the last couple of years, he's turned into the pinnacle of what a number one defenseman can be. He's inserted himself into the conversation for the Norris now for several years in a row. He's going to be right in there again. And somehow, even though over the last little while, he seemingly got even better. He's taking over games. He has been, a huge catalyst for some of their, comebacks in games. And he was the one who really stepped up to get the Jets that point to solidify the division and the President's Trophy and everything. So he is the guy who has stepped up so much this season. And obviously the Hellebuck answer is easy, but in terms of the plays that need to be made, Morrissey has been there when the Jets need him. And I think that's going to, put him ahead of everyone else there.
Yeah, Morrissey's evolved into probably one of the top defensemen in the league. And pretty quickly too, actually, in the last few years, he's really entered that upper echelon for sure. Jacob, who do you think is going to be the series MVP?
I am going to go with the boring answer that Brian steered away from. But it's going to be Jordan Binnington. If the Blues have a chance in this series, it has to be Binnington. The Jets' offense is terrifying. Their power play is ridiculous. And the Blues penalty kill is not good. They can finish 28th in the league or 27th or somewhere around there. They need to stay out of the box. But if they get in the box, it's going to have to be Jordan Binnington if they want any chance to stay in the series.
Yeah, it's a big thing, the PK. I mean, the Jets, like you mentioned, Brian, hasn't been as good lately, but they have been missing some key parts of it. But it is a lethal power play, usually is. And usually bad penalty kills in the playoffs don't go well. And it's something that's going to have to be fixed for sure. All right, moving to some bold predictions, and I'll stay with you, Jacob. What do you got for a bold prediction in this series?
Dylan Holloway comes back, Game 7, scores the overtime winner.
That's a good one, yeah, for sure. Brian, what about you for a bold prediction?
For me, I think the Jets chase Binnington at least once in this series.
Ooh, I like that one. Ooh. I don't like that one, but I like that.
I don't like one. That's good.
Hey, it had to be bold.
Well, yeah. Joel Hofer had 3 of the starts in the season series, it was pretty good, 1.97 goals against average. So it might not be a bad thing that Hofer comes in.
And he's a Manitoba boy too. He actually tends to like playing here, it seems. So
yeah.
It might not be that bad. And just looking at Binnington's only start, he was not good. 3.08 goals against average, 875.
I have another bold prediction. Jordan Binnington finally gets in an NHL fight with Adam Lowry.
I would not. I mean, granted, Binnington's got the crazy aspect, but Lowry's the toughest guy I've ever seen on the ice in terms of that would be frightening for both parties.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we know Binnington's got a pretty short fuse. We've seen it.
The Jets like to be in the crease. Like he's going to get pretty upset with like Gabe Vilardi and and Adam Lowry and stuff like that. Nino, he's not going to like playing against the Jets. So
it's like an over/under 3 slashes between the legs this series.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised. That's for sure.
I'm going to hammer the over on that.
Okay, let's get to our final predictions for this series. And Jacob, who you got in this series? How long is it going to go?
So, I mean, I guess this counteracts my bold prediction of Blues in 7. That's not really my prediction. I'm going to go Jets in 6. I like everything that the Jets have. I think the Jets are going to go far in the playoffs this year. I think it's going to be 2018 again, and hopefully a better result for them. I'm going to say Jets in 6 this year.
All right, Brian, what do you got?
Right there with you. I'm going Jets in 6. I do think that an Ehlers-less Jets with a partially Vilardi-less Jets, it gives the Blues that little bit of a window to take advantage of them missing some firepower. Mm-hmm. So that might give them a chance to steal a couple games, even if the rest of the guys are clicking. But overall, with what you look at what the Jets have done and how they play, that's the thing. How they play is the big thing. They are built to make a run this year, especially. And, I will die on this hill. I think that if they weren't goalied by Marc-Andre Fleury in 2017-18, they would have won the cup that year. But maybe it's this year that they finally get over that hump.
Yeah, and this is the first series. Now I'm not going to say 7-game series, so I am going with Jets in 5. I think this is going to be a shorter series than people think. I think the biggest reason is because Dylan Holloway's out. He's been such a difference maker for the Blues this season, and he might not play in this series until later on, but would have to go long for that to happen. So I think that's going to be a big difference, and I really think Binnington's going to get thrown off his game because of how many guys there may get him off his game. And Hofer, I mean, he could enter the series and be good. So I'm just going to say that the Blues may get 1 win. The Jets is going to go in 5 games. Okay, we'll see how this all goes. It should be a fun series anyway. I mean, it's just I mean, the Jets have been so fun to watch this season, and we'll see if the Blues can give them a bit of a fight and maybe do the upset. I don't know. I don't see it happening, but you never know with these things. And President's Trophy winners doesn't have a good record in the playoffs, unfortunately. But I mean, there are times where they are. So maybe the Jets will change the narrative, and we'll see when that all gets started really soon. I think this series actually starts on Saturday, I believe.
Yep.
Yes, it does. So it's starting really fast. So make sure checking out everything at thehockeyverse.com for all the series previews content we're going to have out for both the Blues and the Jets and the Blues writing team. Lots of fun stuff to come. So check out everything at the site, Substack, and all of our social media channels. But until our next preview show, we will see you next time.